All right, everybody, welcome to 5 on Friday. It's currently 1 p.m. EST on June 12th, and I'm taking over hosting duties today, so it's going to be terrible. I'm very excited about it. Let's start with introductions. Let's go to Kendra.
Hey, everybody. I'm Kendra from Patient. Really excited to be here.
Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Oh, okay. I can do that. I grew up in PA, moved to Missouri 10 years ago for school, haven't left, got swooped into this amazing startup company called Patient that is growing, and I am an account exec there, so doing a little bit of everything from managing our current accounts to selling into new ones, and I'm pumped to be here today.
Awesome. Thank you. Nick?
Hey, what's up, folks? Nick here. I am with Toggle, and I'm their sales team lead. I was hired on a few months back as their first account executive, and now I'm sort of building out the entire sales organization from scratch, based out of Richmond, Virginia, and super excited to be at my first 5 on Friday.
Awesome. Tab?
Cool.
Me? Andrew.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, me? You ready? Okay, sorry. Hey, I'm Tabitha Cavanagh. Some of you know me as Tab, the recruiter. I am the VP of Talent Strategy for Something New. That's a fancy way of saying I recruit sales and marketing leaders in hypergrowth companies, typically some type of tech or SaaS, but we're industry agnostic, and I'm a cancer survivor, so super pumped and passionate about the healthcare space as well. So I love being here, excited to see what's going to happen.
Awesome. Francois?
Thank you, Tab. I'm one of the crazy folks that works with Patrick and Amy getting this together every Friday, which is honestly one of our favorite things. And by day, I sell ERP and CRM software for a Microsoft partner called Encore Business Solutions. I'm up in the Great White North, and I'm originally from the crazy French-speaking part of Canada. So I do have a baguette and a bag of cheese, and there may be a bottle of wine right next to me, I don't know, and there might be a pack of cigarettes. I mean, those are all the French stereotypes right there. So anyway, Andrew, super excited. I missed a little bit of the intro, but I love this like combo of ballet and sales and AI, man. Like I've never heard anything so wild. So I'm literally on the edge of my seat.
Me too. I'm very excited, man. And my name is Patrick Downs. I'm an insane human being. I'm the sales trainer at Panda Doc. I've had a couple drinks already today because it's Friday, and I think this is going to be really fun. And Andrew, let's have you take it away, man.
Yeah, so quick intro. Andrew Hoekstra. By background, I'm an engineer focused on machine learning and AI. But my wife, I won't say roped me into getting involved with her ballet company because I'm very, very excited to be part of it. I'm the executive director of Deos Contemporary Ballet. We do a lot of things that you would expect a professional ballet company to do, but we also are probably the most innovative ballet company you're going to come across, and that's what we're hoping to do a little bit more of, is help businesses take what we're doing with a ballet company and having an engineer in that ballet company fusing together the different ways of taking innovation and motion and making companies more effective with their innovation pipelines.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about what you want to workshop today.
Yeah, so most of the sales processes that we use are cold calls because no product development company is searching for professional ballet companies to work with. So we often have to do a lot of the initial reaching out while we're sort of building up awareness of this process. So that's what I'm hoping to work on, is kind of a cold call pitch over telephone.
So who do you want to pick as your victim as a
Is
prospect?
there anybody who wants to be the victim?
Well, I have a quick question first. Sorry,
Yeah.
Patrick. But do you have it fairly narrowed down yet, Andrew, in terms of like who you think your like kind of target customer audience would be?
I would say no, beyond companies that develop products in-house.
Okay.
So likely this will be not like your Fortune 500 super large companies. This would probably be under 250 employees would be the the most narrow that I've got it right now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just kind of curious who kind of that, like, and who do you try and get on the phone? Who's like, if you could like give us your wish list of these are the people I'd love to talk to next week, who would they be?
Yeah, so it would be like directors of engineering, CTO, people who are very, very interested in having a steady pipeline of new innovative ideas coming across their desk, because they're kind of the decision maker for these sorts of processes.
Well, I want to let somebody else be the volunteer, and you know, I don't know who's game, but I'll let somebody else be Andrew's victim. We're gonna pick somebody if you don't put your hand up.
Kendra.
How did I know this was happening? I was waiting for it. It's like it's happened my whole life, just like this. Weird.
It's gonna be a good time. It's gonna be a really good time. All right, whenever you guys are ready, you can take
I'm
it away.
pitching to Kendra.
You're pitching Kendra.
Yeah, so prep me again. So the audience of people that you're calling, they don't know anything about contemporary ballet.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
You're either CTO or director of engineering. You have products that your company makes and has innovated before. And yeah, that's kind of your world.
Okay. I'm gonna try and embody it. Thinking about our front end developer, Keegan. He would be great for this. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try and embody Keegan. Here we go.
All right, sounds good.
Oh, I'm waiting.
Ring, ring, ring.
Hello, this is Kendra.
Hi, Kendra. This is Andrew Hoekstra with Deos Contemporary Ballet. How are you doing today?
Good. Contemporary ballet?
Yeah, I know it's probably unconventional and not something you're expecting, but thanks for taking my call anyway. I imagine being in the technical world, getting a call from a ballet, you'd probably want to hang up pretty quickly, but I'm hoping you'll give me 2 questions before you make that call.
You know, it's something that is so interesting and caught me off guard that I go for it.
All right. What are you doing right now to ensure that your company stays creative enough to continue innovating like you did with Widget X?
Relevant enough to stay creative. I think really just cultivating an in-house space for folks to throw ideas together, and we kind of dedicate time to that during the week for brainstorming.
Very cool. Very cool. One of the reasons why I'm asking is because product development firms in Michigan are using an unconventional approach besides just using space and regular meeting time to build a pipeline of innovative new products. Are you against learning how they do that?
No, I'd say I'd be really open to learning those things.
Sweet. All right, so in a nutshell, a lot of companies that we've worked with focus a lot on either process or the space in which they're doing innovation. And we found by working with some of the most creative people in the world, professional artists in ballet, that there's a very strong connection between the body and your ability to be creative. So essentially what we do is we put on periodic sort of workshop, once a month for 3 months, where you get people together for about a half day. And yes, we'll go through some innovation processes. Yes, we'll make sure it's in a creative space, but we also walk through essentially the tools that a choreographer uses to stay creative day in and day out, to help encourage the employees to step out of that box and to be able to continue to innovate on a consistent basis. Is that something that would interest you?
I really like the sound and the approach to that. I will say that getting everybody together for a half a day is a lot. Is this something that can be, brought in at a shorter time frame?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways we can do that. You mentioned you already take out some time on a consistent basis. What does that look like at your company?
Yeah, that's our Friday morning roundup. We kind of do 2 hours on a Friday morning and bring in breakfast and just kind of let it be all open for everybody to share their ideas or where they think we should be taking products next.
Very cool. How do you decide kind of what the topic of that day is, or is it really just open, people bring stuff up sort of spontaneously?
Would you decide what the topic of that would be?
I'm sorry, what?
How would you decide what the topic of that would be?
How would I decide that topic? Very good question. So what we would potentially do if we were to, oh, did I just get hung up on?
No, I'm still, I didn't realize I was holding my phone up to my face the whole time.
Kendra.
I was like, wow, that went downhill very fast.
I thought you just hung up on him.
Yeah.
No, I was like,
Awesome.
oh, it's still in my face. I'm so sorry. I just destroyed this whole thing.
You got curved, Andrew.
I'm still listening. Okay, everybody, we're taking it back to Friday morning. I just asked Andrew, how would you help? What's your plan to help the team decide what to talk about that day?
Yeah. So let's just assume then that perhaps this upcoming month, we're invited to come to your Friday stand-up. What we would typically do in advance is briefly survey the products that your company already has, and I might talk with you a little bit about some of these products that maybe you have problems or aspirations that you want to work on in particular. And then we would essentially facilitate a conversation with all these techniques that I mentioned before to start that process of talking about these different products that you already have. And the hope would be in the next month or two, when we repeated this again, the process is somewhat down and people are using that to generate new ideas that can spontaneously come out of meetings.
Sure, Andrew, I think that this is something that is interesting enough that I would love to get some more information on. So I'm going to give you my email. Please send me over kind of your collateral that you have, and let's get a time set up for you to come in and we'll talk about it more.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. I'll send that email right over probably within the next 15 minutes. Appreciate it.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for your call.
Thank you, Kendra. Take care.
Wow.
Hang up.
That was amazing, Andrew. I like to start with somebody that's joining us for the first time. Nick, your feedback would be much appreciated as far as kicking us off, man.
Yeah, of course. You don't have any sales background? That's pretty freaking good.
Ah,
I've got to say,
thank you.
that's impressive. You've done your homework and you've done some research.
I have been learning a lot lately.
Yes. So I've been taking notes. I actually liked how you opened up the call and you just called out the fact that it's really not conventional for PTO to hear a call from a ballet company. And then you use this like psychological reverse tactic of being like, yeah, you probably want to hang up immediately when you get called by a ballet company because it's really weird and not relevant. But can I ask you 2 questions and like give me 30 seconds for that? That was super strong. I would be receptive to that if I was in that person's shoes. And
Sweet.
so
Thank you.
I think that's really good. One just generic critique or constructive criticism would be if you can figure out how to take the language that you're using to actually describe your process and like shrink that by 40 to 50%,
Yeah.
that would really serve you. That would keep people's attention spans high on what it is that you're saying. And so there's a lot of people that could probably help out with that. So that's 2 cents off the top of my head. And then, yeah, your response to the objection of, hey, getting together for half a day, that's kind of a lot. Can that be shortened in any way? That was also pretty strong too, because you kind of acknowledge the objection and then you just ask them a qualifying question, which is exactly what I recommend to anyone. Oh yeah, totally, that can be shortened. How do you guys handle that today? And then you found out that she does it for 2 hours every week anyway, and you just kind of like kept on rolling through the conversation, and that was just obliterated. So all things considered, man, really strong. What do you guys think?
Thank you.
Yeah, I took some notes. And first of all, yeah, great job. That's crazy because I've talked to a ton of engineers and none of them I don't think would be able to do that. So props to you. Some of the things, I mean, I love the questions in the beginning and asking like, how are you staying creative enough to continue innovating? That's so important for every business out there to continue to stay creative and to innovate and to be relevant. So tying back how you can help them do that is awesome. Later in the conversation, you said something about let's assume this. And I was thinking maybe like less assumption and more asking questions. Ask about their challenges. When she asked you what type of topic that you would come in and talk about, I would think that I would want to know just more about the day-to-day life in the company and what challenges, like what are people currently talking about? What are people complaining about? And maybe part of your process is that you're talking to multiple people from each department or some type of representative. So you get a holistic look at the company and understanding, because every department's going to have different challenges. And I was wondering too, the connection between the body and being creative. So my question would be, so wait, are like all of my employees going to be ballerinas at the end of the day, So I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about like the process of that and maybe some examples, maybe pulling some storytelling of how you've been successful doing this in the past. But I mean, I thought that you walked through it really well. You handled it great when she hung up on you. So yeah, well done. Well done. That would be my initial feedback.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Dude, you've clearly been studying, man. Like immediately I was
Definitely.
like, okay, I can hear like James Thornburg in there from LinkedIn. Like I can hear Josh Braun a little bit. You hear the Chris Voss tactics, the negative reverse that you use. It's just like you're pulling out techniques that you usually don't see people that are new to sales. So like you're already way ahead of those people. So that's amazing. And then you have that background of being able to speak to tech, which is going to serve you well. I'm just going to say right up front, man, I'm really excited for your career. And I really want to have you back because I think with a couple tweaks, you're just going to absolutely fucking crush it. And I'm really excited. But some feedback to make you crush it even more is the
please.
call as it went on. I feel like it was really perfect at the start. And then when you started talking about yourself, I could feel a little wavering. And I never want someone talking about themselves on a cold call. Like if somebody asks me what PandaDoc does, I don't even tell them. I'm like, what made you ask that? Are you bored? Like usually like that's why. If someone asks about you, it's usually to get you off the phone. Or they're just confused as to what direction you're going in. So you can then point them in another direction. Like, all right, I help with a couple problems. People tend to fit into one of two buckets, either problem A, problem B, right? Which one are you in? And try to figure that out and then get into more of a pain discussion. I think that would have helped you a lot so that when you do go for the ask, it's linked to something like, hey, you're having X, Y, and Z issue. The reason we're coming in is so we can help you with that. And then by the end, we're going to do X, Y, Z, whatever. Also, tightening up on your ask is going to be big. When I'm asking for a meeting, I want to get a bunch of little yeses because you're building the tension, right? There's so much tension in asking for time from somebody that doesn't know you. So trying to go like, hey, like, let's pretend I can fix this, right? Is there any reason you wouldn't invite me in for 45 minutes? Going with a negative ask again, using what you did at the beginning, again at the end to close it. And then asking, hey, do you have your calendar? Get another little yes. If we're going to do a meeting, would you want to do it next week? Get another little yes. So you have 3 yeses. It's a lot easier for them to say yes to the actual meeting. And then at this point, you want to set up an upfront contract because like, do you actually go and meet them, right? In person? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, it's an in-person thing.
You don't want to show up somewhere and they're like, don't come in, right? Like that's the last thing you want, where they give you the wrong address or some shit, like that's the worst. So for in-person meetings, you really want to confirm the shit out of them, like before you actually set it. So I would even want to be like, look, let's set an upfront contract. You're like, last thing, by the end of the meeting, if you don't feel like we're someone you want to do business with, are you comfortable saying that to me at the end of that meeting? Okay. On the other hand, if I don't feel that way, are you okay with me telling you during that meeting, even though I've come all the way to your business and shown you X, Y, and Z? Great. And if we don't say no to each other, like, are you cool with us figuring out a way to move forward and set up a next step? Cool. Is there any reason you wouldn't be able to make the meeting? No. Anything that could come up? Are you willing to contact me about it? Yes. Do you want to do that by email or phone?
Mm.
Setting up everything. You need to like set the pieces up so every little piece is covered. And if you can even structure that out and get used to it, it'll come off like very easily once you're used to it. But I also noticed your tone. You can definitely tell you're from like an engineering place. So you're very like monotone because your brain works a certain way and you're very analytical. So force yourself to vary your tone, right? Like, and we look at tone as pitch, cadence, and volume. So pitch would be like I'm pitching my voice up or down, and then volume, I'm going to speak quicker when I don't really want people to listen to what I'm saying, but I'm going to slow down when it's more important. And I'm going to raise my voice actually when it's not as important because I want the person to lean in when I'm saying something really key, right? So if you can control that, it's super powerful. All right, that's all my advice. I know I went on for a long time.
It's good stuff.
I think also towards the very end, she was like, you can send me an email. And that is almost always a rejection as opposed to a yes, which is kind of a test in your case. Yeah. So in this case, it sounded like she was actually enthused to talk to you and she probably would have read your email. But going back to like Patrick's feedback, if you would have said, yeah, I'm more than happy to. And as a next step from that, we're going to have a call. So what's your calendar open like for next Thursday or Friday at 2 p.m.? And then just like setting up that next step regardless. Because if someone tells you, yeah, this sounds cool, like send me an email, they're usually trying to blow you off, and don't let them.
Didn't even think about that. That's good.
Buyers are liars. Buyers are liars. So the more you dig in and the more you get them to, asking about Tawny, aka Patrick Downs, he pointed out the whole pain discussion. And the more you can dive in, the more you can get them to realize their own pain and what they're living in, what they're tolerating, and make it a choice for them to try to get on the other side of that. You know what I mean? And by asking them, okay, so maybe they point out some challenges that they're having, then you dive deeper. Well, what happens if you don't change that? Like, what happens if you do nothing? Will your creativity suffer? Will your innovation suffer? Like, asking those things and letting them live in that and feel that a little bit, but not like so much. You don't want to make them feel bad about themselves, but just enough to, keep them listening and keep them thinking about like, oh crap, okay, so who is this affecting across the entire organization? And if we fix it, is that going to improve what part of our business will that help improve that needs that,
I think the one thing I wanted to add, and I want to get Kendra's feedback as the person on the other line. I mean, Patrick obviously thought it was a home run out of the gate because you saw his celebration. And I think, yeah, like that reverse question out of the gate, I was like, wait a minute, I thought this guy hadn't sold anything. Like, what's happening? This is a trick. He's basically selling us today. Like, we're all getting ballet lessons Monday. But I think the piece I would add, because I think a lot of people have given you some great commentary, is, and this takes a lot of work, but doing that research so that you can put them into a place where you can give them a bit of an example. And I realize like you haven't worked with every single company, but like do a little bit of research on them so that there's something that's very personal to them. Like, hey, I read you guys are suffering from this, you can't hire enough people, or you've had this downturn, so that it can become very personal. And then to Tabitha and Patrick's point around that pain, kind of dig into there and, somehow highlight and get them to admit that, the pain of change is actually worth it. Like status quo is terrible. Like, we don't want to stay here. It's worth the pain of trying something new. And if you can kind of coax that out, I think it'd be great. But that's hard if you can't give them something kind of really specific. And you may not have had somebody as a customer specific to what they're doing, but you can probably weave in an example. But Kendra, I mean, you had the phone. I was convinced it was a real call.
We're like halfway through the thing and I'm like, oh man, this is awkward. I'm just like holding my phone up here and like, you don't have a fake phone. So I felt weird because like you didn't have your hand up and it was, so I didn't mean to hang up on you. We kept it going, brought it back down. No, Francois, kind of your point, like a phrase that I've heard is the price of progress is the pain of change. And to the point of kind of what we've all been saying, there were a few things that like I on the other end of the phone was kind of lost through. When you had said like, hey, we want to do some exercises that choreographers do that, you know, to help keep them creative all the time. An example right there would have been great to say like, can you imagine your team on Friday morning doing X, Y, and Z? And set it up so that what they're imagining and picturing in their head, like they have everything that they need to envision what's happening. You're just moving the marionettes and telling them what's up and saying like, oh my gosh, yeah, how big is that room? Is it like a conference room? Yeah, okay. Oh, is it like 15, 20 people in there? How many, you know, packing in there for breakfast? And you can say, oh man, imagine your 20 people doing whatever it is that's happening. And then I would sit here and be like, I would love to see Karen pull that off. I'm in. Yeah, you know, like you'd be able to see that kind of and so that would be my kind of critique there is I got a little lost trying to figure out what the heck it was. I understood like it was for creative planning to help my team continue to innovate through different exercises to be creative, but almost as like it would also kind of fit to team bonding too, right? Like you're doing something unique and exciting, and like, you know, we're going to be in this post-COVID time soon, so like everybody's getting back into the office. Like, hey, your team's been apart for a while. I would love to help get these innovative and creative juices flowing for them again by starting out with some of these exercises.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
I have a quick comment that I'm curious what other people thought, but I noticed, I think you started talking about some example of some funding or statistics in the state of Michigan. And at first I was like, oh, okay, cool, some stats. But then I kind of felt like my brain went into like, this is boring mode. I don't know, anybody else? Like, I think you were looking for some, I don't know if social proof is the right word, but because, you know, you want to give people examples of, you know, this is how it's relatable to you. But it didn't get me excited.
Yeah, I think that what gets people excited, Francois, is like what you said earlier. It's that personal research on like stuff that's super relevant to them and pressing. That's exactly what would get their attention the most. And that's like what by proxy the stats are trying to do. It's like, well, I have stats, so it's like social proof, so you should pay attention. But they would feel way more honored and valued and attentive and interested in what you're saying if you're like exactly what Kendra had said. Like, look, I know I looked on LinkedIn. You guys have been out of the office for like 3 months. I want to help you guys get that creative juice, that innovation flowing again. We have this interesting practice you've probably never heard of. It's about X, Y, and Z, and then you launch into it from there. It's like that would speak to them way more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I wasn't exactly sure how to customize it on a fake call. The best I came up with was widget X.
And that little bit is why she gave you the next 10 seconds in the call, is because you had that tiny bit of personalization. And the bar is super low because when CTOs are getting pitched, half of the cold calls, no one is doing any pre-call research on them whatsoever. And so just by saying, hey, I actually know one thing that your company did, you're already standing out. And if you want to get to that next level, it's doing 2 or 3 extra minutes of pre-call research before the call.
Literally anything. I had someone cold call me the other day and was like, how are you currently keeping up with the bookkeeping for PandaDoc? I was like, the bookkeeping, motherfucker. Like, I'm the sales enablement manager. Like, what the hell would I have to do with that? So anything you can do is going to be so key. And one thing I wanted to workshop with you real quick is, what problems do you think you solve?
What problems do I think I solve?
Or your business?
Yeah. So I worked as an engineer in a local consulting firm around here, and it branded itself sort of as an innovation firm. And a lot of the companies that we work with, they thought of themselves as innovative, right? But they didn't necessarily take out consistent time, and they didn't have, like, they either tried to like highly structure their innovation pipeline, or they just kind of like waited it for it to happen, but like said the value of innovation over and over, hoping that that would spontaneously make it come out, right? And so what this, I think, helps people do is, instead of it being just a thing you do in your brain, innovation, you actually have to embody it. You can't just go to a location, say we're in our location space, or be in your brain and say I'm in my innovative frame of mind. You actually have to use your body and be intentional about that. And it's taking people very purposefully out of their comfort zone, because very few people have done anything related to ballet. So it's almost impossible for them to be in their own box when they're in this space.
I think you need to both zoom out and zoom in a little bit. Like when you're talking about like the innovation pipeline and all that stuff, I feel like that's too high level. I feel like you need to get more like day to day about it. Like what's an example that you can pull to and be like, hey, this is something that's happening, and we come in and we make it another thing.
Yeah. So one example might be an innovation workshop that I've been a part of in other companies. It's the classic, you're all kind of sitting in rows. You've got a couple of people up front who have the whiteboard and the sticky notes, and they're encouraging you to get out of your seat and put up the sticky notes. And you watch people, they'll sit at their desk, they'll write on their sticky notes, they'll stand up, they'll put it up, and then they'll just go right back and sit right back down, right? And like right there, there's already a routine that people have when they engage in innovation that, you know, there's so many different ways to kind of stimulate different ways of doing things in your brain. So like, yes, there's still going to be sticky notes at this sort of innovation, creative time that we're going to spend together, but you're not going to be stationary. There's not really going to be the opportunity for people who tend to be more quiet. You're going to essentially be encouraged to come out of that shell and not necessarily have to speak, but be able to use nonverbal communication to express things, which can often be easier for some people too.
Can you take that and turn that into a problem statement?
Oh, oof, oof. Yes,
keep
if
asking.
I spent a half hour writing down on things and working on it.
I think you can do it right now. I think if you
I'd like to try.
give your best.
Yeah. Does every single one of your innovation workshops look exactly the same?
Yes.
That's not a problem.
Yeah. What problem does that cause? Like if all of my innovation workshops look the same, what happens?
All of your innovation workshops look the same, then you're probably going to be getting the same results every single time, which would be a pretty stale pipeline of ideas.
What was the goal before I put it on?
The goal would be to, in my mind, have your next widget X come out of this time together.
And are people investing a lot into these?
Investing a lot into
the workshops or the labs or whatever?
Some are open to them. A lot of them are internal processes that some people or companies will put on once or twice a year.
So to me, the problem sounds like, you're investing in with time and resources into these innovation workshops and putting all these people in here for a certain amount of time with the goal of releasing, widget X, Y, or Z. And what's happening is at the end of it, nothing has changed. We're still where we were when we started, and we just wasted everybody's time. Like we had a goal to hit, we didn't.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
That's part of why a lot of people shy away from innovation workshops, I think, because the perception is that widget X comes out of it, where, I don't know, the philosophy that I kind of have in the back of my head is that if you're going into one of these workshops expecting widget X to come out of it right then and there, you're probably going to be disappointed most of the time. It's really about regularly engaging with creative activities, because you can never really predict when that innovation spark happens. So not really sure how to weave that into it, but yes, from their perspective, the goal is we do these workshops, we get widget X out. after some amount of time.
The situation sounds like you have a company that has like a stagnant place of ideas, right? Like things are not moving the way they need to move in order for them to progress their business and release a new product. So you come in and you help stimulate that so that they can get to a place where eventually they will release that thing, right? Like that's what you really do. So you're like, one, resetting their expectations so they know what to expect. Two, actually getting them to the promised land. So like, even if you can paint a narrative of like, hey, most people that come in and do this, they're just selling you bullshit and trying to get you out of your creative funk. But like what we're actually doing is taking you and fucking shaking you and getting you there for real. Like, this is the landscape now, we're changing it. I'm coming from a different place. Like, I want to know how you've done this in the past and what you're planning to do to fix this stagnation. And I think trying to like really press on stagnation is going to be your problem, because that's the actual problem.
Yeah.
I think they like when Andrew gave you that first initial like attempt, Patrick, of like that problem statement of like, you do innovation, you've done innovation workshops and there's no innovation. Like, I think I like that because it was succinct, but it's like he needed to really drive home, like you're doing these innovation workshops and you're doing the same thing and you're like, there is no innovation, like calling it right out and somehow weaving in like stagnation but I think like just driving that home, like you've put on these innovation workshops, but you're doing something like, that definition of insanity. You just keep doing the same thing and expecting a new result. That's what we do. We actually bring it a completely different approach. But I like the direction that Patrick was going, and I don't think it's lost on anyone. Like you're doing something complicated, but you're trying to really simplify that message. And that's the hardest part. But I think when you can get that's when that light bulb will go off, right? And maybe that initial problem statement, I don't know what you think here, Patrick, but maybe it needs a little bit of like tailoring per person so that you can kind of say, you want innovation in something a little bit more, flavored to what they do versus, hey, Patrick, do you want to hear about bookkeeping? No, you don't want to hear about bookkeeping. So, hey, CTO, we know you do this, and this is where you're hitting a wall. You've done this, you've talked about it on this press release or in this LinkedIn post. Here's what we're going to do that's going to completely like provide a new way of thinking or a new perspective. That's some of my feedback.
Yeah, I feel like some other things to think about too, maybe, similar to what you're saying, like follow these leaders on social media, where try to find where somebody in their company is probably on some type of social media. If they're not, then I'm guessing they're not very innovative in general, if they're not like showing up and trying to do something in that space. So, I mean, don't look past like things like podcasts and have their leaders been on different podcasts, because sometimes on those, people really let their walls down and they talk about things that they might not normally. And that could be that little tidbit of information you need to tie it back to exactly what you're doing. You might have a leader on a call say something directly relevant to the fact that they have X that they're working on and trying to get it launched or whatever it is. So
right.
Podcasts, articles, I mean, just Google the name of the person and see what comes up. Because honestly, you'll find a lot in many cases.
Yeah, Patrick, I don't know if you have like a formula or ratio for folks when you're cold calling, but like, because personalization takes time. But I mean, Andrew, I'm guessing you're not cranking out 100 calls a day.
No.
So you probably have the time and the benefit to do a little bit of tailoring. So that CTO may be a football fan. So maybe there's like a football analogy of a recent like play or really amazing something that his favorite quarterback did that, you could use as, again, like kind of this emotional hook. I know you're coming from ballet, so, that might kind of throw them because you're like, what are you, football, are you ballet? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. Now we're throwing sports into it. Like, yeah.
And I'll share with you after this call, I'll send you an email to a tool that can help you do a bunch of research on a bunch of different, like Tab mentioned, podcasts, 10Ks, like that takes a lot of time, but if you can boil it down, I think you've got that short amount of time to really hook them. And you don't want them hanging up like Kendra did. I mean, you had her at the beginning, and to Patrick's point, like on all these calls, everyone's circled back with almost everybody here participating we want to help you not just today, but like down the road. And so, like Patrick said, I think the 2 month retrospect will be really interesting. I mean, if you think like the Bachelor reunion's emotional, wait till you see ours.
I love it. That's so funny.
Dude, the one with Gil?
What about?
Oh my
Wasn't
God.
there? Wait, what'd you say?
We had a reunion with the first guy we ever brought on 5onFriday, and like I legit almost broke down. It was so beautiful. Like the improvement was insane. It was like watching a child grow up in front of you, but it was a 40-year-old man. Like it was amazing.
And for context, Andrew, he was at a 0. You're not at a 0, and he was at a 0.
I'm just happy to hear I'm not at 0.
Standards.
Wasn't there a football player that did like Dancing with the Stars or something? What was his name? Does anybody know? There was definitely, I remember, I don't watch that show, but I just remember, I'm trying to remember the name, but there was a football player that did Dancing with the Stars. So my point being is like, there's even examples in real life of big burly like football players doing something that's well out of their comfort zone. So, I mean, I feel like there's definitely examples you could find of that to even just like lighten the mood a little bit and make it relatable to, there are football players out there dancing,
Yeah.
And look at, I think it was like Michael Strahan or something. And like I'm sure you could probably Google, his feelings about it after he did it and seeing how, like what benefits he got from it to see if he felt like it made him more creative or innovative or something along those lines. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there because I just thought of it off the top of my head, but maybe that'll help.
Yeah, I did end up taking a couple of ballet classes myself after getting involved with this, and man, it is a lot of work. It is so hard to do. Maybe that's just because I don't move like that, but I don't know.
One thought that just popped to mind too, kind of ties into that. It might be useful to have like a list of 3 15-second stories that you can just pull out of the top of your hat at any given moment that are exact examples of that. Just like crazy, weird things like, well, when LeBron James went on Dancing with the Stars, blah, 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 blah. That keeps you as someone who's like really charming and engaging on the phone. It's just like dropping these little tidbits of wisdom, and it kind of adds credibility to your case. And then the other thing is if you had a list of qualifying questions that you wanted to ask, and you just had that armed as a resource in your brain of like follow-up questions to ask about how are you handling innovation on the IT department today? Have you done workshops? Have those been terrible? And then like getting that one extra layer deep and like uncovering that pain. If you had questions written down in front of you that could help you with that every single time, I think that would be enormously helpful.
I think you're right, because you all sort of mentioned that about halfway through the call I lost steam, and that's actually where I ran out of my notes on my page. So almost
then good for you, because you're natural at improv.
Yeah.
I just to add to what Nick said, I would say it'd be, like those example stories, you could probably build a really good list of, artists or musicians. And then as you start to tailor your call script and say, okay, I'm calling Patrick today. I know that he likes jazz, and I know he likes, grease pole wrestling. So these are the 2 stories I have that relate to jazz and grease pole wrestling.
Is that a thing?
Patrick's going to be a captive audience.
Like, where we come up with that?
Grease pole wrestling?
Dancing or wrestling? I don't know. I didn't want to go down pole dancing.
What the hell is grease?
So you added grease to it?
It always gets a bit weird here, but that's as weird as I can take it today. But
Sufficiently weird for all of us.
I feel very comfortable with that.
Hey. I can see you doing some grease pole dancing, Patrick.
Oh, I'm about to just look up what the fuck that is.
Please. Andrew, to add to that, I think it's those little stories that break down the initial barriers, right? Like, even if you throw somebody's name up in Google, like, you might get a story about their kid on the baseball team, or like something they did in their community or something like that. And to be able to jump on and say like, hey, that news story about, what you guys did the other weekend, I'm just calling to say, like, I think that's really spectacular. Would you mind if I ask you the, 2 questions before you hang up, and then go into chatting about it? Like, being able to have those things, and it doesn't take long to pull those little stories. And something that I do, whether it's right or wrong, because I'm not that much older in sales than you, Andrew, is saying, like, hi, how are you? People don't ever, like, when they pick up the phone, you go, oh, hi, Ben, how are you today? They usually go, oh, good. And it like, it's just a natural conversation thing that's like, oh yeah, I'll answer that. But knowing that, you're going in there to sell something, but it just doesn't have to feel like sales. You're solving a problem. You've identified what that problem is. You know how your solution is unique to doing that, and turning it to very concise, like what Nick said, bring it 40 or 50% down, and comparing your solution to that problem with a couple stories dropped in there, like, you're already, a lot of the way there. Like, it was great.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Andrew, quick question for you. I'm curious, like, right now in your prospecting, are you, like, is the cold call like touch number 3? Are you doing any combos around, like, are you emailing them? Are you pinging them on LinkedIn and then cold calling them? Or are you just cold calling? Like, what's kind of your method right now?
Yeah, right now I haven't tried the phone cold calling, which is why I was interested in giving that a shot, because I like to take my time if I have it. So I'd much rather craft up a message and try to do some of the customization that way. So yeah, it's been a little bit of LinkedIn, and then from the people that I've had in my network, I've done email stuff, but no phone calls yet. So now I'm a little bit more encouraged to be able to do that.
So are you going to be cold calling people, or are you going to try, like, email, LinkedIn, and then the cold call? Or is it going to be a classic cold call? They have no idea who Andrew is.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would imagine it would probably be better if they had seen an email from me or a LinkedIn message before getting the call. But I haven't seen, I mean, this is a relatively new starting pitch thing, so I haven't seen a lot of the fruits coming back from sending out the initial messages to be able to hop on the phone with people. So yeah, I don't know if that's answering your question, but I would anticipate that this initial call maybe isn't the first one. But
I feel like Nick and Patrick can give more data or examples here around, the right cadence or the right combo approach. I don't know.
I'd be happy to. Oh, see you, Kendra.
Hi, Kendra.
I just had one thought, though, that I wanted to plant as a seed before we go. Different personalities can sell things in entirely different ways. And with an engineering background, you've heard a lot of stuff today about, like, relating super personally with people with, like, stories and being charming and engaging. And I just want you to know that, like, that's not the only route to be incredibly successful in sales. You can go into a cold call through multiple attack vectors. And one of those could be like a industry expertise vector. One of those could be I'm super relatable and I know you and I know about your hometown vector. So there's just lots of different ways, and you can feel free to experiment with your own personality, which one of those actually works best for you. You don't have to fit into a cookie cutter type of structure. So I just wanted to let you know that there's a ton of freedom when it comes to sales. But as far as, like, doing the actual cadence and stuff goes, I think that you could totally just experiment around with that as well. You can use a tool like Mixmatch for like $10 a month to, like, create email cadences that follow up automatically before you. I would recommend doing a personalized email, which probably on another call or some other time we could go into, like, what that would look like. Personalized email for your first email, and then send 2 automated follow-ups after that at a minimum. But you can totally automate the follow-up process. And then once they've received that first and that second email, then you might send a LinkedIn message, and then you might actually give them a call. But generally speaking, I would say probably want to give them a couple of emails and touch points before you call. That's my 2 cents.
Okay.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to show up on LinkedIn where they are if they're there. And that's a great way to segue into a call, is interact with their content for 2 weeks and engage and do what you can to support there. They're going to start seeing your name over and over. And one thing I do in recruitment is if I have to send a message first, like especially when I was recruiting in IT, I would always have to send an in-mail first. And then I would call I would send the in-mail and then I would call. Like it was all in a row. And I would call and say, hey, I know not everybody spends as much time on LinkedIn as I do. So I just wanted to direct your attention over to an email I sent. I'd love the chance to chat about it, give them my phone number and be done. You know, and I try to make a joke, or again, it's all about your personality, and your voice is going to sound different than my voice. But when you can joke and keep it lighthearted, like one time I told someone, you know, hey, I dropped my Calendly link into the in-mail. Well, I didn't say Calendly correctly. So I just joked around and I was like, oh, Calendly, say that 5 times fast. And when the person called me back, they actually said it 5 times and they joked. They were like, yeah, it was really hard. So it was just like little nuances that you can just interject your personality into it as well. And using a phone call to follow up on something you just did, direct their attention there. So you're not like word vomiting in the voicemail. Like, this is what we do. This is why you should call me back. But just, hey, because now they know, oh, I've got an email waiting for me and they want to see what it's about. So they go check it.
That's good. How often you all like leave voicemails? And that's one of the things that every time I get to the end of a phone call, whether it's for this or something else, I'm always debating whether I even should leave a voicemail, because I don't really listen to most of my voicemails. So.
I think that if you're going to leave a voicemail, it either has to be so deadly personalized and specific and with a clear call to action that like references an email subject line that you sent that they can reply to there. That's the way that I've gotten a couple of opportunities from voicemails, but they almost never work. So unless you're like really good as far as like dropping in tons and tons of these personal voicemails, I almost think that you can skip them. Other folks might disagree. The only opportunities I've ever created from a voicemail, though, have been like insanely hyper personalized and tailored, and I'm just not willing to put in that effort at scale. That's me.
Patrick, you gotta close it off with something more wild than grease pole dancing.
You guys should watch my video that I posted today if you want something wild. Have you guys seen that yet?
Not yet.
I talk about being an SDR, be like a perpetual edging. Like you're just like delaying climax for as long as possible because you're passing off the deal. So that's the most wild thing I've said on LinkedIn.
Yeah, you definitely beat me.
I put that on a professional networking site. I'm an adult.
Oh.